I start every talk I've ever given, I've given a lot of talks over the years, with a very quick devotion of the talk, so that it's less about what I want or what I think should be a good result, and more about what my essence wants you to hear. And this is actually something I talk about a lot in the book, what I loosely describe as devotion, which has been a life-changing experience for me to understand what it means to let go of all of your work and not expect anything to come back from it other than whatever is emerging in that moment. So I'm going to devote this conversation to love, you, all of you, from love, from me as connected to all of you. So this is from love to love, and whatever emerges is the absolute perfect thing to emerge in this moment. The actual idea from this idea of devotion is one of the most profound teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, which I'm sure some of you have enjoyed. Hi. And I'm actually in the middle of writing a kind of remixed version of it, and I've studied 10 or so different versions of it. And the version that's been most profound for me has been Gandhi's version. Gandhi annotated a version of the Bhagavad Gita. And in it, he discusses this idea of devotion as the power that allowed him to transform one of the world's largest countries peacefully, relatively peacefully, when he was around, from colonial rule to the rule by the people. And he talks about his ability to use the Bhagavad Gita's advice to never get hooked into his own role within that, and what it was for him, what it was, what should be happening, what a great result of this march or that statement was. And it's an incredibly powerful thrive hack. So it can hack through any egoic desire to grab onto something and look at what you might get from it, rather than to let it emerge from you. So it's one of the many thrive hacks in the book that I've just written. The book took me almost a decade to write. So rather than try and explain what's in it, because there's a lot in it, I thought it might be more interesting for me to back up a little bit and explore why this book, of all the books I could have written, and all the books I will write, why this particular book, and what was it for, who's it for, and why I figured I wanted to write it. So I want to picture the scene before I started writing it, 10 years before that. I left a wonderful university, one of the best universities in the world, with one of the best degrees you can get from that university. I'd studied medicine, human biology, physiology, etc., and philosophy. So I had these two amazing strands of information, really the cutting edge of everything we know about this thing, and the cutting edge of everything we know about all the ideas in the world. And yet, I had no idea how to live. No one had taught me how to live, how to deal with life, which seemed bizarre to me, having such a good education. But these two rivers, if you like, are very powerful. They're very powerful to help us understand how to use this thing and this thing, how to use them together. And so when I started to write this book, I wanted to painstakingly, and it really was painstakingly, and it was a labour of love, to connect all this science over here, which gives us one view of our experience and what we can do with our life, and connect it to all this philosophy, both Western and Eastern, which has a different view of how you can do things with life. And they haven't really been connected up that well. There are books that draw on one or the other, but they're mainly rooted in one or the other. And this book for me had to be as rigorous and relevant to a science lover as it was someone who really wants to understand how to live from the heart, what people call spiritually. And so that's why it took so long. I could have rushed out a book much quicker with the basic principles of what I wanted to do, but I wanted this book to be a handbook for the best of what we know about how to thrive in our life. And that's what I wrote. So there's a lot in it. It starts with the premise that if we're going to be living a spiritual life, it has to be in this world here, not in a retreat, not in a meditation hall, not in a yoga shala. It has to be in the world. Otherwise, it is something that we access rarely in moments rather than in the nitty-gritty of everyday life. And that's really where life counts, is how you respond to your kid when they wake up at 3 in the morning, how you respond to your partner when they're ratty after a long day at work, how you respond to an email that threatens your livelihood, and the things that might happen from that. Those are the moments where spirituality counts. I think it's relatively easy to bliss out and experience altered states when you are out of life. But I think the point of life is to live life, and the point of a spiritual practice is to practice for living life, not for something you do outside of life. And so then, how do we start? Where does one start living that kind of life from? And I realized that the natural place that we start all life from, and all actually human evolution has come from, is problem solving. So there's a basic understanding now in evolutionary biology that life is essentially a collection of small problem-solving moments, one by one, and from that, this entire crazy human complexity emerged from. So when an amoeba sits there and goes, how do I get some more food? That's a problem. And it solves the problem. And sometimes it solves the problem by inventing a new pattern, new behavior, new habit, or by mutating and innovating its biology. And why don't we see if we can bring spirituality to bear on problems? So what does that look like? And so I talk a lot about biology. I'm a former biologist, and there's a word in biology which is very powerful called metabolize, to metabolize something. So all our cells in our body right now are metabolizing what you've eaten and drunk today. They are taking these little molecules of energy and they're taking them inside the cell where they can do something with them, i.e. mainly build proteins and other cellular process. So I talk about the book to find the problems that we are facing. The bigger the better, because the bigger the problem, the bigger the possibility that comes out of it when we understand how to open it. And take that problem and metabolize it into our being. And that is a mind-body thing, it's a heart-head thing, it's a full experience of life. To, rather than push our problems away, which usually looks like blaming someone else for them, or blaming ourselves for them, equally unhelpful, we take them on into us and go, what can this problem be stimulating me to grow within myself? And I premise to everyone here that any problem is only a problem for you because some part of your being hasn't yet fully grown to be able to handle it. Same for me. So a problem for me may not be a problem for you, and vice versa. So as soon as we have a problem, a challenge, an issue, an upset, a disappointment, anything that we can loosely lump under the understanding that this is not absolutely ideal for my life, it's actually a sign that there's growth that can occur. More wholeness, more creativity, more power, more acceptance, more surrender. So even the ultimate problem, which is death, our ultimate problem of our life is death, that we know it's going to happen, and so therefore we can imagine it, which as far as we know no other species can do. And this is what the beginning of the terror of the human condition is that we know that at some point this thing is going to end, the switch is going to go off. And therefore that's the ultimate problem that all of us have to somehow face. And so one of my practices is to lie in bed, where I do a lot of my inner work, and I literally bring my full imaginative capacity onto the moment I'm going to die. Like actually what it's going to feel like to know, Christ, this is it. This is that moment that I've been thinking about all my life. I'm not going to see my kids again. I'm not going to see my wife again. I'm not going to be able to play in the park again. This is it. And if there's a single feeling of charge in me, either of terror or excitement, anything that isn't absolute peace with that moment, then I know I still got work to do and I am not in surrender and I can't fully accept the reality of this human experience, which is at some point it's going to end. And so that's kind of the ultimate problem. So the book takes you on a process of how the hell do you do that? How do you take something which is scary? Because the bigger the problem, the bigger the fear it usually brings up. Are we living a relationship that isn't working? Do we have no relationship and we really want one? Are our kids going to be abducted and taken from us? You know, these are lots of problems to think about, to become peaceful with. And everyone has their own. And then how do we open that problem up to find this beautiful piece of learning within it? And the ultimate lesson I've learned from my own experience doing this for 20 odd years is psychology will get you so far, but unless you have access to what we call spirit, love, the cosmos, and access to something that allows us to feel safe, knowing that everything can be taken away from us apart from that thing, we will not be able to fully break through our fears and therefore solve our problems. And that has been a hard-won lesson. I did not want to be a spiritual teacher. It was never anything that I thought I would want to be or would be. I was actually an avowed atheist for a good decade, and I found ultimately that the atheist model, even with the best psychology in the world, can help you understand a psychological problem you have, can help you analyze why it's there. It can even help you mitigate the problem a little bit. But if you want to fully dissolve it, so you no longer experience any feeling of negativity around this experience of life, then the only way to do that is to dissolve it into love. And the source of love that we all have access to, which is bigger than our own love, is the love we have from the universe. And with that get from the universe, we can give ourselves the love that we wish we'd gotten when we were kids. And I think everyone wished they had a slightly different, slightly better, slightly richer, slightly more something journey into life. And the reality is no one's ever going to give that to us again. It's done. That ship has sailed. So if we want to experience the full connection that we might glimmer in meditation, or we might experience in Peru on a shamanic journey, if we want to be able to experience that in every single minute of our life, the moment I stood here and devoted this talk to love, we have to have that channel open. And that's what the book is called, why the book is called Switch On, because it's a realization that's a choice. We're all connected all the time by the very nature of the fact that you have cells, which you do, and that those cells are made up of molecules, which they are, and atoms and quarks and leptons and all the things that go down. Those things are fundamentally part, I believe, of one universe. Not two, not 20,000, not 9 billion, but one universe. And that universe is nature. When we explore connection, what we would call physical connection, and we explore it in a human experience, we think of it as love, or we feel it as love. So when people say the universe is love, I believe that's a human metaphor for a physical reality that is interconnection, interwovenness, interbeing. And when we can experience that love, everything works. Everything can work. And the channel is always open, the love is always there, but we have lots and lots of things that stop us feeling it. And I had 30 years worth of accumulated habits and patterns and ideas about the world that didn't allow me to feel that love. So it wasn't a question of finding love I didn't have, it was a question of allowing the love that was already there to be there. And that was an amazing process of letting go. And that's why I believe many traditions talk so much about surrender. The root of the word Islam means to surrender. And that's the great tough lesson of life, is if we want the amazing breakthrough, the creative experience, the amazing project, the amazing business, the amazing relationship, the amazing parenting experience, to get that breakthrough, we have to give up something first. And we have to let go of stuff that's been very convenient for us and very helpful for us for many, many years. And the only way to let go of the things that are holding us together, those things that we know we don't want to do anymore, like being addicted or being angry or being scared of speaking in public, or any of the things that we know we don't want anymore, the only way we can let them go is if we dissolve them away in this field of love, rather than try and force them away. And if we force them away, the protection part of us just kicks back further. And someone who spent 10 years of my life in and out of psychotherapy, I can tell you that it's extremely helpful to a point, but unless you bring the spirit back into psychology, which was forcefully taken out of it by Freud and his disciples, who didn't want it to be weird, New Age, Madame Blavatsky, they wanted it to be science. As you bring the spirit back into science, it's just an impoverished understanding of how we can experience thriving, which is our birthright. Every human being has the birthright to experience each moment as a switched on, conscious, beautiful, juicy moment, even if it's in the moment of a terrible sadness or loss. We still have the ability to thrive with that loss. Not be happy with it, different thing altogether, thrive with it. To use it for its full potential, to allow us to enjoy, experience relish, suck out the juice and the learning out of every moment. But I know how to be switched on. My life, as many of our lives, probably everyone in this room's life, goes through periods of the day when we are resisting the world, and there's a no. You know when you're resisting because somewhere in your being, it could be deep body, it could be top of your mind, is no. This isn't quite right for me. This isn't what I wanted. This isn't the way it should be. The bus should have stopped for me. The Tories shouldn't get in. You know, whatever. So no. And if we're in a no, then we're off. If we're in a yes, and I talk about the book, the yes and, which is even more powerful. It's another Thrive hack. Yes and. Yes, this is happening, and I would rather it was like this. We're back switched on. So I flip between switched off and switched on all day, every day. But over the last 10 years, and particularly writing this book, actually, it's very hard to write a book and not start to have to actually live it. I'm sure many people do, but I did not want to write a book that talked a talk and didn't walk the walk. So I spend moments each day going, okay, I can feel something in my field, I've got some no here somewhere, there's something that's disturbing me, letting it go, healing something which could be profound, it could be tiny, and getting back into being, this is the perfect moment for me right now, here, in all its tragedy and all its triumph. I think that's why I spent.
Is there a case for simplicity, I suppose?
Yes, so you can hack the whole process of breakthrough. And the book's basically about breakthrough. You can hack that whole process just by saying, I let it go, I love this moment, thank you, universe, all good, whatever, right? That's the hack.
Some
fine line between surrender and bypass.
Sure.
And my belief is if you keep having the same fear, let's call it a charge, a reaction to something, either I want to hide from it or I want to punch it out and get rid of it because it's pissing me off, right? Survival, fight or flight. If there's any part of that that keeps coming back regularly and we just bliss out and go, oh, it's okay, I'm going to yoga, it's all good, we are just kicking the can down the road, right? It's still there. The pain is there. But then it doesn't necessarily mean in the middle of a Tuesday, meeting we're just going to have to sit down and go, sorry, I've got to process my stuff, man. I've got to go and, not appropriate, right? So it's a question of going, okay, I've clearly got something around whatever, commitment, intimacy, challenges from my boss, whatever it is. I can either keep trying to short circuit it and just surrender, or I can actually go into it. And I would always advocate at some point diving in. But the process that would take me, a year of therapy, you can do in 10 minutes when you actually know how the system works. That your whatever thing you've got there is a defense. It's meant to be there. You can't destroy it. You can't get rid of it. You can't stop your addiction by getting angry with yourself, because then that's more of the pain that the addiction's there to protect yourself from. So as you become more practiced at this kind of super fast healing / creative process, which I would call switching on for a metaphor, it becomes relatively easy, relatively elegant, and you can have other people do it as well. So it doesn't take me very long now to do what would have taken me, I would have spent hours talking to someone about. But I do that. I am quite rigorous with myself, and I'm married to a healer and teacher as well. So we spend, probably 3 hours a day talking about all the patterns and blockages we've got. So you can go, okay, there's a problem, it's big, but I know that if I just choose one meaning of it, it's going to lock me in. So I can dance around it, I can flex around it, and choose where my meaning point is. There's something important in this work is to remember that you can't spreadsheetize problems and go, they're not apples and oranges, you can't judge them. One person's tiny thing you think is tiny could be massive for them. And there's a kind of saying which is, pain will expand into the space that is available for it, even if you might find it tiny. I definitely find that as I go through this process and I become more elegant and fast, I become more playful about stuff that might be quite severe when I first thought about it. I take a laugh about it usually afterwards, going, God, do you remember that time I thought I was going to lose my son in my divorce? And I can literally do that because I've worked through it. There's no fear now of losing him. That was actually very real for me. That was I was finishing off the book when that was happening, so it was like a real 5 in the morning, night after night fear, and it was. And it's part of my own experience of being in a divorce, so that was great clearing, right? So yes, you definitely become lighter, but what then happens? And this is something in the book is very clear about, and my work's very clear about, which is not always very sexy in the mind, body, spirit space, is that as you clear away your own suffering, you have a greater capacity to help on the suffering of others. So it's not like, oh, my problems are solved, sweet, I'm off on the cruise and I'm going to go and bliss out for my life. It's about going, okay, well, my family's got some pretty horrible, gnarly stuff going on. My work is an unethical place that's destroying the planet. Society is horrible, and suicide rates are the highest for 20-year-olds than anything else. You know, there are no shortages of problems to take on, but you can't take them on if you're not resourced yourself. So I know I work a lot in social enterprise and non-profit. And there are lots of people who are totally addicted in their own life and totally fearful, but they're doing a great job over here saving the world, but a horrible job bringing up kids. And so you're just robbing Peter to pay Paul. You're just saying, well, I'll solve your problem over there, but I'm going to create problems of my own around my family and life and relationships. So it's definitely the first job is to get your own place, not to a place of perfection, but just a place of resilience, or what I call thrivability, the ability to be able to actually roll with life. And when you get to thrivability, yeah, so it's kind of like the opposite. Resilience is kind of like what I do when shit happens to me. Thrivability is a kind of, I can embrace lots of things and take them on and I'm good, which is actually also leadership. So you don't get to a point as being a leader in an organization usually until you can step beyond your own issues and help other people deal with theirs. That's what really leadership is. It's creating a space for other people to thrive. And then you get into maybe roles in societal leadership. What role do I want to play? What is my beef? What saddens me the most in the world around me? What connects to my purpose, my heart? And what role can I play in that? So for me, enlightenment and social change are two parts of the same continuum, not two different genres. And I struggled with a number of publishers trying to get them to understand that, certainly for my generation, they're the same thing. I want the world to thrive and I want to thrive too. And they're not two different things. So yeah, very, very important to me that we look at enlightenment as the gateway into being of service, being of action, being of leadership, not the end point. Even though it might take us 30, 40 years to get to that point, it's then an open door to, oh wow, I can truly be of service. I can truly lead from purpose and heart. I don't need anything back from anyone. I'm not graspy for results, which is what I think why we all look at people like Gandhi and Mandela, because they spent years getting to a point where they had a big enough heart to not make it about them. Earliest problems. God, where do I start? I mean, I get a whiteboard out. Definitely losing my son, massive. He actually lives with me now. So it's just ironic that I had all those nights, restless nights and whatever, but I had to get the freedom around it to be able to create that. So that, I'm an entrepreneur, have been for 15 years, have 2 small children, family, and there's always the ever-present, it's all going to go wrong and it's all going to, you know, never going to get a client again, never going to, it's all going to, so that's the kind of like thing that I have to, constant dance, that one. But again, the more I trust, the better business gets. It's like a beautiful quid pro quo. Deep inner stuff, probably the biggest thing I had to get over was an amazing sensitivity to social exclusion for bullying. I was bullied as a kid relentlessly for about 10 years by pretty much everyone who was in my life apart from a couple. And we now know that social exclusion hurts in the brain in the same place that physical pain hurts. So it's exactly, you know, sticks and stones may break my bones, that will never hurt me. Actually, they hurt the same. And so for me, that's been a long journey of being able to be open-hearted in not so much social situations, but with specific kinds of people, cliques, groups, things like that, so I can be totally at peace in my being and still have people be bitchy and cliquey and mean and rude and whatever. That's been a big one for me. I think those are probably some of the biggest. And I'm sure pretty much everyone's got, you know, versions of those. You know, something you're going to lose, money you might not earn, destitution, and through the when I work one-to-one and in workshops, I encourage people to take on the biggest thing they've got. It's fun to test drive processes through little things like, oh, I can't wake up in the morning, oh, that kind of stuff. Great. But if we're going to do the work now, let's not have a dress rehearsal for life. Let's do the thing now. Let's go live. And really, and it's something I can honestly say, because I have been through so many challenges in my own experience, the bigger the problem or the breakdown, the bigger the breakthrough is possible. The more release, the more freedom, the more liberation, the more it affects other parts of your life. You thought it was just about that, and suddenly, like with my son, the loss of a child, I'm never going to see him again, I'm going to be a dad, my primary role as a parent is going to be just gone, and when I felt freedom from that, and trusted that whatever would be, and it would be okay, it would be livable with, or thrivable with, it then allowed me to have a sense of freedom around a lot of things around in my family, around how things should be or not be. Actually, another one which is just actually, I'm not going to share that one. There was another one that around the same time I was writing the book that kept me awake. It involved the law, and I've always had a funny relationship with the law, so it was actually one where I was invited by this problem to get totally okay with the man, and the power that the state has over the individual, which is something that doesn't affect many of us now, but you don't have to go back that much in time or to other countries in the world where that's the most powerful force around, and it can disappear people like that. So that was a good one to get at peace with.